game. Mac Brown has his Longhorns at 14th in the polls, 2-0, a pretty solid start. Not the two best opponents he's already played, but a very good showing after the last 2 years were kind of mediocre. But he's got a sophomore quarterback, David Ash, of course, through 2 games, 377 passing yards. Jackson Shipley's doing pretty well in the receiving game at wide receiver. How do you think Mac Brown likes this offense at this point?
I think he does like the progression that he has seen on the Texas offense. You know, one thing after the New Mexico game, he was asked, you know, if what you see is what you get right now for the Texas offense, and he just said that, you know, they're not showing all of the weapons that they currently have on offense for Texas because they haven't had to. Now, like you said, Texas has not really faced the greatest of opponents in Wyoming and New Mexico, but they have done pretty well. One thing that's kind of interesting about David Ash's passing yards is they gave him, against New Mexico, in the New Mexico game, they gave him a 45-yard touchdown pass to Jay Johnson. So that's actually was maybe like a 6-inch flip to Jay Johnson, but since it wasn't a handoff, they credited him a 45-yard pass being touchdown. So really, I mean, you kind of look at that like, I don't know if it's really 377, but still, you know, I mean, it's a good start for David Ash. And last season, I think a lot of people need to remember that he should have redshirted. If you really look at the situation there, Texas did not have the answer to quarterback. So David Ash comes in, a true freshman in 2011. They get thrown into the mix, and that's tough for any true freshman, regardless of the position that they play, but especially for the quarterback, because the quarterback is supposed to be the commander and the leader of the offense. So for an 18-year-old fresh face true freshman to come in and try to lead this team, I think was really tough for him. But I think it's going to be a really big test to see how he handles the adversity, how he handles going into the SEC country and that atmosphere that he really has not seen yet at Texas.
Well, Taylor, despite the fact that the Big 12 does not have a conference championship game, obviously with a new 10-team format, many people think the Big 12 is the best conference, at least through 2 weeks of the season. You have, obviously, Texas, you have Oklahoma, you have West Virginia. I mean, there's about 4 or 5 teams that are viable contenders to win the. What's your take on the Big 12, and how will this Ole Miss game kind of give Texas a barometer, moving forward as to how they might be able to compete throughout the rest of the Big 12 season?
I think the Big 12 is pretty strong right now. Out of all of the teams that are in the Big 12, I think that the team to watch at this point is West Virginia. And, this is their first year in the Big 12 play, but, they have a lot of weapons on that team, and I definitely think at this point they should be favored to win the Big 12 conference. I believe that this game is the only SEC opponent that the Big 12 is scheduled for this season. But I think Texas will get a feel for what they have on their roster after this weekend. With, as I said, David Ash, he hasn't won on the road yet as the starter, and after this week they'll have a bye week, and then they go out to Stillwater to face Oklahoma State, who is the defending Big 12 champions from 2011. So I think if Texas can pull out a win here, that they will have the true confidence that they need to be able to face the Oklahomas and the Cotton Bowl and the West Virginia teams, and all of that. But I do also think that it's going to be a lot closer. I know that Texas is currently favored to win. I think the spread was 10 points, but I would not be surprised to see if this game is a 3-point.
Well, Taylor, it doesn't get much easier for Mac Brown and the Longhorns after this trip to Oxford. Next 4 games are pretty brutal. You go to Stillwater, then you host West Virginia, you go to Dallas for Oklahoma, and then you host Baylor. That's a tough stretch. We're going to find a lot about what this Texas team is about tomorrow evening in Oxford, Mississippi. I think Texas needs to go out there and have pretty much like a convincing win like the first 2 weeks just to prepare for the potent offense against Oklahoma State next week. But it goes back to what you stated about the offense maybe not showing all their plays yet. They may not even have to show all their plays Saturday at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is
surprises and they start playing Colt's brother?
At this point, I don't know. I mean, I think it's gonna, however David handles this game is really gonna determine his future as the starter for Texas. In the off season, they still have the quarterback battle between Chase McCoy and David Ash, and according to the coaches, David Ash, definitely won the battle, but it was closer than a lot of people thought that it would have been. Now, I don't know if Chase McCoy he's had a big win over Texas A&M last year, but really, if you watch the game closely, he didn't do much in that game outside of the final 2 minutes where he led the track. Now, that's all he needed to do to get the win, but still, I think if David Ash struggles, I wouldn't be surprised if Chase McCoy comes into the game, but I think it has to be a really bad situation for them to pull David Ash, because I don't think that the coaches really want Ash to lose that confidence at this point. I think they all are behind him, and they think that he is the best quarterback on campus at the University of Texas. So I think it would have to take a lot for the coaches to pull Ash out of the game and put Chase McCoy in.
Taylor, speaking of the battle between David Ash and Chase McCoy, this may sound a little bit controversial. I don't mean for it to come off this way, but with him being Colt McCoy's younger brother, has there been political pressure to play him, or at one point was there political pressure to play him? I mean, let's face it, Colt McCoy is one of the legendary quarterbacks in Texas history. I mean, aside from Vince Young and a few others, he's one of the best they've ever had. Does it seem like, from a media point of view, that there was some political pressure to play Chase McCoy?
I don't know if there was pressure on the coaching staff. I think a lot of people want to speculate that, because if they look at Chase McCoy on paper, I think a lot of people think that why would Texas recruit this kid if he had a different last name, if his last name was Smith or Jones, would Chase McCoy be on campus? Now, the one thing about Chase is he has a lot of personality qualities that Colt has. He is a natural born leader. The only thing with Chase, though, is he always gets the physical, like the physique and the talent that Colt has. So I think that makes people question, if it was Anna McCoy, would he really be on campus? I wouldn't necessarily think that. I think the coaches really like Chase, and I think that they were concerned that he would transfer after David Ash played in the entire Holiday Bowl. But I think that's why they didn't go after Bo Wallace, because they didn't want to see Chase McCoy transfer in case they needed him. So I wouldn't think that there's pressure to really play him, but I do think that the coaches were concerned that he would have transferred if they would have brought in another quarterback like Bo Wallace.
Well, my last thing, Taylor, is about the fan base. Alongside with the A&M fan base out there, of course, they're joining the SEC this season. What are the majority of the Texas fans' thoughts on A&M going to the SEC, and how sweet would it be to see a Cotton Bowl matchup between A&M and Texas this season?
I think the younger kind of diehard Texas fans are more like, good, get the Aggies out of here. But I think the people who have more of a level-headed approach of it are kind of sad to see the rivalry between Texas and Texas A&M ending. But I think the majority of people in Texas country, and all over the country, probably think that Texas A&M has
Tennessee if Tennessee had a 9-3 or 10-2 record. So I kind of think it's going to be a little bit of a shocker. I think it's going to be Texas and LSU in the Cotton Bowl. What's your thoughts on possibly playing LSU and how the season might shake out? I mean, would the Longhorn fans be happy with the Cotton Bowl bid this year?
I think the Longhorns need to be happy with something like that. You know, Texas, they played the Holiday Bowl last season, and they got the win, but I think a lot of the fan base kind of thought, like, oh, well, a Holiday Bowl, you know, but I think I haven't really thought about the bowl projections just yet in the season, but I do think that I think Texas has the chance to win 10 games this season. Now, that is if everything goes right. That is, you know, if David Ash can get the confidence, the real confidence he needs, not just what, you know, the coach and him talk about in the media, like actual confidence. If he can do that, and if the offensive line can really step up their game, I think that Texas does have a chance to be a 10-2 team this season. Regarding the bowl, I'm not